You ever wonder how your brain gets programmed? I know, it sounds kind of sci-fi, but it happens every single day. And today we're going to connect two totally different stories, a kid's homework and some dogs, to show you exactly how your reality gets built. It's pretty wild. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's just jump right in with a kind of weird question. Can a lie literally create your reality? I know, it sounds a little out there, but the answer is, well, it's not what you'd expect. And it tells us something absolutely crucial about the blueprint that's running the show inside your head. So, our first piece of the puzzle, it comes from a pretty wild place, a middle school classroom. And it's all about this one homework assignment that, honestly, seemed designed to get kids to do the one thing they're constantly told not to do. All right, so this assignment, it was called the lie poem. Super simple idea, but it's got some real depth to it. The teacher told these 12-year-olds to write a poem about themselves, but it had to be filled with the most unbelievable stuff they could think of. So you get these poems about, flying around the city or lifting a car with one hand. But the teacher noticed something incredible happening. These kids, they weren't really lying. They were dreaming out loud. They were writing about the biggest, coolest, most heroic versions of themselves, basically the person they secretly hoped they could become one day. So why on earth does this work, right? What's the magic behind an assignment that literally tells kids to lie? Well, it turns out it's basically a direct hack into the operating system of your brain. Okay, check this out. Here's the breakdown. A kid writes, "I can fly." What they're really doing is creating a vision. Now, your subconscious mind, it doesn't really care about the word lie. It doesn't process that. It just sees the picture. And that picture, it becomes a blueprint. It plants a seed of possibility in the brain. And you know what? Over time, our behavior actually starts to shift to match that bigger vision. It's the exact same thing Arnold Schwarzenegger talked about, visualizing his success way before he ever made it big. And this is the key takeaway, for real. Your subconscious mind is not a fact checker. It's more like a movie projector. You feed it a powerful image, this so-called lie about what you're capable of, and it just accepts it as a potential future. It literally can't tell the difference between what's real and what's just a super vivid vision. It's kind of funny when you step back and look at it, right? It reminds me of that line from the movie E.T., How do you explain school to a higher intelligence? Sometimes our normal way of doing things just misses the whole point. In a school system that's all about facts, 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 the only way to sneak in a lesson on dreaming big was to, well, disguise it as an assignment about lying. Okay, so what we've just talked about, that's programming from the inside out. You're the one consciously creating that vision. But what about when the programming comes from the outside in, when it happens automatically without you even noticing? To get the answer to that question, we gotta jump in a time machine. We're going back to a quiet lab in St. Petersburg, Russia, and we're gonna meet a guy who made one of the biggest discoveries about how our minds work, totally by accident. Meet Ivan Pavlov. Now, this guy was a physician, a physiologist, a man who loved hard data and stuff he could actually measure. To him, psychology was all a bit, dreamy. He was way more interested in things he could see and observe, like digestion. He famously kept insisting, "I am a physiologist," long after everyone else started calling him a pioneer of psychology. And get this, in 1904, Pavlov actually won a Nobel Prize. But it wasn't for bells, or dogs, or psychology. Nope, he won it for his incredible research on digestion. His biggest claim to fame was still waiting, just around the corner. So the big mystery started when Pavlov noticed something weird happening in his lab. The dogs he was using for his digestion experiments, they started drooling before he even brought out the food. Just the sound of someone's footsteps or the sight of a lab coat, that was enough to trigger a real physical reaction. And his scientific brain just had to know why. So to figure this out, he came up with this now legendary experiment. It's so simple, it's brilliant. First, he'd ring a bell. Just a sound, right? The dogs couldn't care less. Then he'd start ringing the bell and immediately give them food. And of course, they'd salivate. He just did this over and over and over. Bell, food, bell, food. You get the idea. And then came the moment of truth. He rang the bell all by itself. And what happened? The dog started salivating. That totally neutral, meaningless sound had suddenly become a powerful trigger. And just like that, he had stumbled onto this huge concept, classical conditioning. It's this learning process where the brain makes an automatic link between two totally unrelated things. It's learning that happens completely under the radar, without any conscious thought.
And the irony is just perfect, isn't it? Pavlov, the guy who wanted nothing to do with the mind, had just discovered one of its most basic operating principles.
All right, so now we've got our two stories, a kid's poem full of lies and a bell that makes dogs drool. On the surface, they seem like they're from different planets. But when you put them together, that's when you finally see the whole picture of how our brains get programmed. And here it is, the big reveal. The lie poem? That's conditioning from the inside out. It's conscious, it's intentional. You're driving it toward a future goal. Pavlov's dogs? That's conditioning from the outside in. It's totally unconscious, automatic, and it's all about reacting to something that happened in the past. One is about building the future you want, the other is about reacting based on old programming. And guess what? Both of these things are happening to you all day, every day.
So that brings us to, honestly, the most important question of all. If both of these programming systems are running in the background 24/7, who's actually writing the code for your brain?
I mean, really think about it. Those fears you have that you can't explain, that habits you can't seem to break, sudden cravings, a lot of that is classical conditioning. That song on a commercial that makes you suddenly want a soda, that's pure Pavlov. But the goals you set for yourself, that future you're trying to build, even if it feels a million miles away right now, that's your Laya poem. And the cool thing is, you have access to both.
And that, right there, is the whole point of this. Once you understand that your brain can be programmed by stuff happening to you and by the visions you create for yourself, you get to choose. It gives you the power. You can start to notice and undo the automatic programming you don't want, and you can get busy intentionally programming the future that you do want.
So, as we wrap this up, I just want to leave you with this one last thought. Your mind is like this incredibly powerful receiver, okay? And it's constantly being programmed both by the world around you and by the stories you tell yourself. So, the only question that really matters is, who do you want holding the remote?